All right, so now we're going to look at some practical nutrition suggestions for training. So obviously we know the role of carbohydrates in supporting your blood sugar levels as well as that muscle glycogen. So it's really important that prior to training sessions we have carbohydrate-rich meals or snacks as well as water. So look, depending on whether you're training early in the morning, whether it's in the afternoon, this will all dictate some of your food choices. And when you work with a sports dietitian, you can sit down and really map out your training month or training week and look at the timing of those meals and snacks and how they're going to support those training sessions. So banana and honey on toast, your crumpets and jam, a date scone, pikelets with jam, up and go, fruit and yogurt, cereal and fruit, or for some eggs on toast with some juice, are all totally appropriate options that would provide some good fuel ahead of training. In terms of those amounts, that's going to be very dependent on the individual, and the choice is also dependent on the individual in terms of preference as well as tolerance of those different things. And a key thing to remember here, you might be having a look at some of these foods and going, oh, that's weird, that's not the healthiest option. Why would Jess be suggesting that? But the key thing to remember about sports nutrition is it's not always the healthiest foods that are required. So definitely healthy foods form, your foundation nutrition, but there is also a place and a space for some things like your jams or your juice, those that do have higher sugar content for the purpose of the activity that you're doing and getting enough fuel in your bodies. So don't ever forget that. Recovery snacks, meals, as well as water, so great options that provide a good hit of protein as well as that carbohydrate, your chicken, cheese and salad rolls or wraps. Another option there, because some people are just like, oh, can't stand another sandwich or roll, might be making up your own homemade goodness bowl, with a good portion of rice or pasta, your chunk of protein, whether it's chicken or tuna and cheese, your avocado, and then getting in a little bit of colour. So there's different combinations and creative ways that you can still achieve the same nutrient composition of a meal or snack. An up-and-go energizer might be a convenient sports food that some athletes require or need if they're kind of racing from training to school. A fruit smoothie or chalky milk, an omelette with grainy toast, spaghetti bolognese, tofu scramble and baked beans on grainy toast and orange juice, if we have any plant-based eaters in the group, tuna pasta bakes. So typically a lot of the family meals are generally really well balanced in terms of these foods, and I guess an important thing to remember here is try to aim for more carbohydrate rich foods on big training days or before big training days. So for example, for dinner, if you had a big long run on the Sunday morning, Saturday night, you want to load up a bit more. So pasta or rice-based dishes, risottos, spaghettis, things like that, as well as your pre-training snack prior to. If you guys are starting to look at 2 sessions per day or a combination of a run and gym, again, try to put more fuel in on those days. Adding a pinch or 2 of salt to your recovery meals can also assist your hydration. So you don't necessarily need to take an electrolyte product, but the addition of salt in choosing your good, fruit, veggies, as well as your milk, and having enough water will help aid that hydration process. So to discuss that in a little bit more depth, younger bodies do find it harder to cool down in summer or hot and humid environments. So obviously you lose sweat through the cooler months as well. So do keep, your water bottles around you because often when it's inside, it's in mind that you'll continue to sip on it, which can help. But if an athlete experiences a 2% change in body mass, so if we're looking at your pre-training weight and then your post-training weight, taking into consideration what you might have drunk during that session, if we noted that was a 2% change or deficit, it would be indicative of experiencing some effects of dehydration. So that's when we do work closely with our elite athletes, and it's something that you can start doing now, but again, speak to a sports dietitian to get some support around there. But essentially, you want to aim to replace at least 1.5 times what was lost over the next 4 or so hours post-training to help rehydrate the body. If you really haven't lost much, you don't need to drink that much. So it's really as simple as that. And the reason it is the little bit extra is because quite often after exercise you do continue perspiring or sweating. So keep your drink bottles around, and just be aware that obviously this is probably going to be a bit more of an issue across the hot and humid months. So again, the addition of some extra salt to your recovery meals and a dairy-based recovery snack or drink can really assist rehydration. If you are experiencing dizziness, fatigue, poor concentration, headaches, you feel really thirsty, or you're producing a small dark volume of urine, it's more than likely you are dehydrated. So it's always a good idea to really take note of that the morning after your big training day, as well as on that day. But if you've had a long run on the Sunday morning or something like that, and it's been a hot day, Monday will probably tell you more about your hydration status and how well you've rehydrated across that day that's followed. Again, if you've got any concerns around this space, speak to your accredited sports dietitian. And some other simple strategies, and this can be really difficult for endurance athletes that head out on long runs, and in terms of the availability of drinks. And if you've got little drink taps around, obviously there's been a lot closed during COVID-19, which has made things challenging. But you might need to really, lean on your support team or your family, or bribe them with something to be able to provide you your drink bottle at certain points during that long run, and particularly as that increases and your volume picks up as you move into the senior ranks. So keep drink bottles close. Icy cold drinks are really beneficial to help pre-cool and cool the body down, particularly if it's been hot. Even icy towels and around your neck or around your body can cool the body down. And we actually do some cool stuff around pre-fueling. We're working with our Tokyo-bound race walkers and marathoners around this place, which will continue to implement some of these strategies ahead of hopefully next year's Olympic and Paralympic Games. Carrying your eskies out to training, and training in suitable clothing and fabric to minimise the risk of, increased sweat production. So all of these strategies can really assist the risk of heat illness and dehydration, particularly across the warmer months. Okay, so we'll move on to altitude training. So we've got Brett Robinson here doing lots of volumes up at Falls Creek. So now, look, I'm not sure if you guys have started going to altitude destinations yet, but I'm sure it's not too far away if you haven't. And for those that have, hopefully you're aware of some of these strategies, and if not, definitely take them on board. So at altitude, your body needs more energy when you're training and living at altitude, and that's due to there being less oxygen available at that higher geographical location. So that's known as a hypoxic environment. So if you have less oxygen, your body has to work harder to function. So if you're training at altitude and requiring oxygen for your training, think of the effect and how much energy your body's going to be using. So obviously, the main purpose of altitude is to increase your hemoglobin mass, which essentially enables more iron to be transported around your body and the development of those greater iron stores and that protein. So for when you are down at sea level, back in, your respective states off the mountain, you're able to perform at a higher intensity. So there's that greater hemoglobin mass. So if you went to altitude and you actually dropped a lot of weight, or your energy wasn't adequate, it's more likely that you won't actually increase your hemoglobin mass, which was the purpose of going to altitude. So it's really important that at altitude you're having more to eat and you're supplementing with iron. So this is the other place that iron supplementation would be indicated. The additional thing outside of energy and iron is also higher hydration or fluid needs. So at altitude, with that change in environmental conditions and the drier temperatures, etc., there's greater respiratory losses. So your hydration needs will increase. It's a really great and suggested idea to get your iron tested 4 to 6 weeks prior to going to altitude. So if your iron is suboptimal or is on the lower side, you can kickstart the supplement process and make sure you're going to altitude with low iron. It's really not a great idea, I think, if you're going to altitude destinations with low iron, because essentially you're not getting the true effects of the purpose of being at altitude. As mentioned, you'll need to follow that up with a sports doc or accredited sports dietitian regarding the dose and the brand. As you can see down here on the screen, this is called Ferrograd C. It's something that's typically recommended, but again, speak to someone a bit more in the know. So it's best to take your iron supplement first thing in the morning to maximize the absorption. And that's just related to that increase in that protein called hepcidin, which can impact the absorption. So be really mindful of when you're taking it and what food you're taking the iron supplement with. So if there is anybody that has a coffee or something like that and you're having it with your iron supplement, the caffeine will impair the iron absorption. So just be mindful of that. And chat to a sports dietitian if you're a bit unsure of when and how to take how much. So you want to increase your intake of iron-rich meals, your rice, your pasta, your colourful veggies and fruit. So again, at altitude, because of the additional stresses that it places on the body in conjunction with your training, you need for lots of good quality antioxidants, and colour in your diet is also really important. So you don't need to take any other vitamins or fancy products outside of the iron. The main things are getting in enough energy, having some more to drink, as well as looking at getting your iron tested. So if you've got adequate energy availability at altitude, you're more likely to have much greater opportunity of increased hemoglobin mass and therefore performance benefits. So it's a pretty cool thing, and you know, a great way to explore different places and be immersed in nature. All right, so now we're going to look at some nutrition for competition. So hopefully you guys have this pretty well sorted. If not, it's definitely worth sitting down and planning, because often, you know, a lot of athletes, and look, even at the world champs level last year, I met athletes that still didn't know how to do this. So if you guys can learn this now, you're going to be well ahead of the game. And this is just second nature. You don't even have to think about it. You're just confident with what you're doing. So we want to fuel the body to perform and showcase your commitment to hard training. So there's no point rocking up to a comp and not knowing what to eat and thinking about all the training that you've done to prepare for that competition, and then not having the right fuel sources on board to enable all of those beautiful training adaptations and your hard work to shine. So if we look at the night before your race, food suggestions, simply plain rice, plain pasta with a lean source of meat and fish. So you don't need excessive or huge boluses of protein, just enough to keep you full, and a light amount of salad or veggies. Again, not ideal to load up on the veggies or legumes or beans, garlic or onion, not too much of that the night before. Could result in some gut upsets. And then if you felt like a little top-up snack after, for supper or dessert, fruit and yogurt or cereal. A couple of the endurance athletes presented who we have shown, the endurance athletes in this slide, cereal is a massive part of their dietary intake, as I'm sure it is for some of you guys. So really simple carbohydrate, big portion of your meal the night before. So typically, if we're planning backwards on a race day, ideally you would be suggested to have your substantial meal, so 3 to 4 hours before. So for example, let's just suggest your race is at 11. So between 7 and 8, you're going to have a substantial breakfast. For some, this might be a bowl of cereal. For others, it might be a bowl of porridge or oats, fruit and yogurt or juice. For others, it might be some eggs on toast with juice and banana. So it doesn't matter too much about the types of foods, provided that they're carbohydrate rich and not too high in fiber. So everybody's going to have slightly different preferences. Again, just be mindful of not over drinking your fluids. Sometimes that can happen when you are nervous. So 1 to 2 hours before, that's when you want to aim for that pre-race snack. So whether that's as simple as a banana and a muesli bar, or a banana or a muesli bar, and up and go. Again, that will be related to individual preference, and just sipping on water An up and go is something that for athletes that are getting very nervous, a liquid meal, sports food or supplements such as an up and go will digest more quickly through the digestive tract. So therefore you won't have any issues if you're someone that does get particularly nervous. After that warm-up, if you want, water, and you can sip on a little bit of sports drink if you like, or just swirl it around in your mouth. And that can actually excite, I guess, your brain receptors and kind of prepare your body and as a little top-up after that warm-up. But at this age and with some of your races, it's not always, indicated to have that sports drink. But certainly a strategy that we would use with some of our senior athletes. So if you can get this well practiced, and again, practice this in training before comp, so you've got it sorted, you're confident, and it's one less thing you have to worry about when you're nervous. Again, if you're traveling interstate to nationals, etc., make sure, depending on where you're staying, that you know that you can access the foods that you would typically consume. Or if it's a restaurant, where are you going to eat out prior to your race? So forward planning, pre-planning in terms of that organization space is really important to just minimize any kind of stress or anxiety as that's building close to your race, because nervousness is a huge part of it. So as much as it is about the foods, organisation can play a key role in your nutrition for competition. I'll just say too, with nutrition for competition and endurance athletes, obviously as we push more to kind of half marathon, that's going to change what we do leading into the competition in the days prior to in terms of carbohydrate loading. So an important point there. Okay, so now we're at the conclusion of the session. So thank you so much for your attention, guys. I know it's been a bit more of a longer session, but hopefully you've all learnt something, or it's triggered something for you to want to follow up or to improve in, and I've no doubt that it will impact positively on your training and performance. So you guys have super high energy needs, so don't forget that and keep fueling for the work required. You've got high iron, calcium, protein, as well as those carbohydrate requirements to support your growth and development, support your energy availability, as well as the bone and muscle and the different tendon and ligaments, your different structures. We know that altitude places greater stress on your body, so be mindful and refer back to that slide in terms of the suggestions around iron. Do keep an eye on fatigue, your energy levels, mental health, growth and development of any gut symptoms. So in terms of that low energy availability space or the red S space, just be mindful of that, and that endurance athletes are at greater risk. And really important to check in with an accredited sports dietitian, a sports physician, for further support if you are experiencing any of these challenges, and simply to upskill and to educate yourself. We're here to support you, so use us as much as you can, because sometimes it's just about acquiring knowledge and then tailoring that to work out what suits your bodies. All right, so if you guys require some further support, please don't be afraid to reach out. The more you can communicate with your service providers or your network, the more they can help you. So Athletics Australia have some great recommended medical service providers, including sports physicians, sports psychologists, and sports dietitians. So I've helped collate the list of suggested accredited sports dietitians. So look, they'll be all great, and they're all based nationally. If you have a look on the SDA website as well, there's another realm of great accredited sports dietitians. Those that are provided through the AA website have worked specifically with athletics, so probably check that space first. And again, happy to put you in touch with anyone. In terms of additional resources and knowledge, and with respect to the Coach's Toolkit resources that were shown during this presentation, Sports Dietitians Australia have a number of fact sheets, excuse the spelling mistake there, recipes and resources, as well as a free electronic magazine called Refuel, again with a number of recipes and different articles around different athletes athletics is included, and their sports nutrition needs, supplements, all sorts of things. So really great resource. AIS Nutrition is obviously a place at the moment where there are some excellent resources made available. And if anybody is struggling in terms of, finding this time of adolescence challenging from a body image perspective, disordered eating or eating disorder perspective, please reach out. It's really so critical, not just for your performance, but for your health, to get on top of this now and get the support you require, because it can be a really devastating illness if things continue to, bubble out of control. So the National Eating Disorders Collaboration or the Butterfly Foundation are really good places just to explore that a little bit more for further information. But please speak to your parents or those that you trust in terms of getting support around that place if you require. Most recently too, the NEDC and AIS released some great resources for athletes, coaches and high performance staff around the risks of isolation, which has been a crazy time that we've all been in, and how that can impact or influence an athlete's perception of their body image or disordered eating. So do have a look at that if you can. Okay, so that's everything from me. Thank you so much for your attention. Enjoy the rest of the 2020 Target Talent Program. And as I said, don't hesitate to reach out. There's no silly questions. I'd be more than happy to provide some support or put you in touch with those that can support you within your respective states. All right, good luck and look forward to seeing your careers flourish.